Hello and welcome. I'm finally here. I'm going to give you a story about a little girl from Cuba. And I'm basically doing this to, first off, thank my parents for showing me throughout the years what communist looks like and what propaganda is as well. And I know that many people have asked me to write a book. Well, I'm not going to do that, but I could talk about it. And hopefully my children will understand my perspective because they were obviously raised here. And my first batch had a Cuban dad that actually was very patriotic as well, and he understood why he was here. Now, my second batch had an American dad, so that was a little different. So we didn't speak Spanish in the house, and they don't know why I feel the way I feel about some of the stuff that is happening to this country. Some call us MAGA or whatever, but that's not the case. I am neither a Republican or a Democrat. I am about policies. And some of the stuff that makes me feel like is socialist. There's no such thing as socialist. You're either a capitalist or you are a communist. The socialist word is almost like a fool you. It's a propaganda thing. There's no such thing as that. No socialist country has survived. Most of them to fail. Cuba, on the other hand, has been there for a long time and it hasn't failed, but I think it's about to. And I can't thank this president enough and his sidekick Rubio for this. And hopefully my dad can see a free Cuba before he dies. But anyways, I'm finally here to tell the story. After sharing all the newspaper clips, by now you know I'm a Cuban refugee. I was born in Havana, Cuba. And I even went to school there. I came when I was 9 years old. Although in my mind, I had come a lot younger. But talking to my dad, we finally came up with the right age that I came here. And I don't know why I suppressed all that. But I came when I was 9, and my first birthday was, the 10th birthday was here in the U.S. We left Cuba on March 21st. We got here on March 23rd. And my birthday was March 27. It was a bash. I had the most beautiful birthday I could think of and a lot of presents and stuff that I had never seen in Cuba. Not even with the Three Kings Day, which is what they celebrate for toys. You only get one toy, and that was it. Anyways, my parents obviously were planning this for a long time. My dad, a.k.a. the skipper, he was planning it for about a year. They used the decoy of Grandma, that's why it became Operation Grandma, to talk to family that was living here about when we were going to go or what were we thinking, or that's how he communicated with the family here in the U.S. about that whole thing. But for a long time, I had suppressed so many details that it was actually good talking to him and getting all these facts from him. I might need to break this up in a few episodes because I don't want to bore you, and I sure don't want to rush you. Both of my parents are Cuban. My mom had her entire family in Cuba, which that would be another story itself because my dad went back during the Mariel to pick them up, which then I can explain to you when Trump said all these countries were letting out the people that were in jails and the people that were in mental facilities. That is absolutely true because Fidel did it first. And it worked magically with people that went to pick up family members from Cuba. For every family member they took out, they had to take a bunch that we didn't know who they were or where they came from. That Fidel Castro did it first before Venezuela did and all these other countries did. So anyways, when the revolution happened in 1959, much of his family, my dad's family, had already left, along with others during that same time. Apparently, my dad was incarcerated for political reasons. When you're not aligned with the communist government, there's consequences. So I'm not sure if he was officially considered a political prisoner. He's 81 now, and maybe that's what happened, or maybe he just wants to spare me of some of the details. And I understand. I have stuff in my closet too that I don't want to tell my children. So I get it if he doesn't want to give me all the details. But thankfully, he met my mom, and I came along on March 27, 1967. I remember living in a corner house in Concepcion, Lauton, I believe it's called. Havana is the city, so Lauton would be like the neighborhood, or Concepcion, I know it was the street. I remember we had a black dog. His name was Furia, which I absolutely adored, and he absolutely adored my dad. I remember being the star of the show because when my dad would sleep, nobody could wake him up, only me. So I felt like a rock star in my house. And I was daddy's little girl, and my brother was more attached to my mom. So those little details I do remember. My dad drove a bus. I remember going on routes with him, and I remember a lot of laughter, a lot of music, a lot of dancing. But anyways, those are the things that I remember. I know there were a lot of blackouts in Cuba. They call them rolling blackouts. And one time I was left home alone for a few minutes. My parents went to the neighbor's house, and because of a candle, a fire started. And in Cuba, the homes have metal guards, I guess, in the windows. You can't get out. So I remember being between the window and the metal. I'm trying to say now remember so much, but keep in mind I'm telling a story. I'll try to use other words. Again, English is my second language. But I remember getting in, being in there in the fire and the rolling blackouts because my parents were pretty upset when they got back. I didn't torch the place, but I felt really bad, and I was all black. According to my parents, I looked like a little black kid because of all the black smoke. But yeah, that was some of the things that happened to me that kind of shaped me, I guess, as I move in this crazy world of life. My parents discussing the escape from Cuba, I do recall that as well, too. And I even recall seeing them, the parts of the boat. There was a white foam of some sort, and the components, and then putting them together, and everything was hush hush. But I remember hearing them discussing this when we finally had the opportunity to try the first time, because they tried 2 times. The first time didn't go so well, and my mom was not having it. She didn't think that white float was gonna get us 90 miles away from Cuba, and she thought that was going to be a big disaster. Sure enough, it fell apart, and it fell miserably in the shores of the beach. So that happened with that attempt. So plan B. I guess my dad knew of a lake, or I don't know if it's called a lake in Cuba, or a pond where there was a rowboat there, and that's where that second plan came about. I kept thinking, my little brother was so young, can't imagine what he was going through, but he was attached to my mom like there was no tomorrow. Me and my dad were very close. After that first failed attempt, I took it upon myself to go to school and start blabbering that my parents were going to leave Cuba and that we were going to the USA to be with my dad's family. I told anyone who would listen. Luckily, there was the teacher knew my parents, and she went to my house and told my parents that I was going to get them arrested. And I got a ass whipping like I've never had one before, especially I think that was the first time my dad actually hit me. I mean, there were many others after that, but I got into a lot of trouble. And back in the days, remember, they didn't believe in, what is it, when they spanking kids, that they spanked you, they slapped you, and I got a good one. But we didn't stop. He tried again, this time with a different boat, and one that had been stolen from the lake in Lawnmower, a lawnmower engine that had been converted into a boat. And this was by a friend of his. There was 8 of us on the boat. Technically, there was my mom, my dad, me and Uli, that's 4. My tia Cookie and Tio were the 6, and the other 2 gentlemen were the ones that were also helping with the boat. I think Ceballo was one of them who actually had the motor. So everybody played a part in it. In my memory, it was crowded either way and tense and quiet at the same time. I remember darkness and the sound of the water. I remember holding tight and staying close to my dad. As a child, you don't really understand the dangers of the risks. You just know something big is happening. I could feel the seriousness of the moment, even when I could completely didn't understand what was going on. The only thing that happened in that whole voyage for me, that night, the first night that we were, because we left at night, that night was pretty brutal. But it was okay because they still had water, they still had cigarettes, they still had coffee. So it wasn't nothing major. The second day, when the sun came out, we survived that first night. So everybody was happy. Again, there was still water, there was still things, everything was good. The one thing that comes to my mind is seeing a school of dolphins that surrounded the boat. And my goodness, I had never seen one before. So that was like, oh, wow, this is beautiful. As a child, I thought it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I was so excited. I tried to stand up, look at them, but my dad screamed out of nowhere and said, no, they will tip this boat over. I don't think I could ever forget those scream, because everybody went into like pause moment and you couldn't even move in this boat. Any sudden movement, you would have turned the boat over. So you were very tight in there. So those dolphins in the water were just incredible. And it felt like, okay, that means we're getting close to something, because dolphins, we didn't know any better. They could have been anywhere, but we know they don't come to shore that often. So we knew we were really in the deep sea. We thought maybe it meant we were getting close. Everybody was excited, but couldn't move. But deep down, we lost the dolphins and we moved on from that. The dark night came upon us, and it was, again, another night. Honestly, don't know how anybody made it through that night or the trip. I got to give credit to my younger brother, because I think he was just tied to my mom, holding on for dear life. My parents really took a chance to bring two young children on that journey. Some people might say that's crazy, but again, when you're in a communist country, you do some crazy stuff. And he had family here, so in his mind, I can see what he thought. I'm going to be rescued. And they have been talking back and forth with that grandma thing. And they knew more or less when my dad was leaving, because that was the day that they were going to release his grandma or his mom back to the house, knowing full well that his mom was dead. So they kind of had an idea, and they were supposed to be looking for us out at sea. But it's a big sea, and I don't care if it's only 90 miles. It is big. And in that little boat that looked like an ant, after we looked at it from, after many, many months after, and we went to look at it, it was like, wow, we can't believe we did that. But anyways, his entire family was in the United States, and they had a boat, and they were going to look for us. My dad kept repeating that to everybody. Hey, they're going to find us. They're going to find us. Don't care. The mood on the boat felt heavy, almost like death. The ocean is so vast, and our little boat looked like a little ant in the middle of it. Many people felt that way, and no one would ever say anything. I think everybody was just scared. It's not something that was said, or I don't know. It was, according to my dad, everybody was pretty determined, but that second night was a little scary. Even though there were arguments and moments of desperation on that second full day in daylight, he never lost that determination. He was certain that they were going to find us. We were running low on water, and the adults had run out of cigarettes. Felt like a do or die moment, with a compass in hand, and a lot of faith in God, and many prayers to the saints of the Catholic faith, Santa Barbara, which is what they named me after, Barbara, La Caridad de Cobre, and of course, my dad is a faithful man of Shango, which is Santa Barbara. My dad suddenly, out of nowhere, spotted a boat in the distance, and oh my God, did everybody mood change instantly. The boat still looked far away, but my dad was certain that it was a USA boat. He kept saying, there is no boat like that in Cuba, in Cuban waters, other than a communist coast guards, and they're not like that. So we knew then for sure that we were in American waters. But again, it's a big ocean. But How does one determine whose water it is? I don't know. I guess that would be another show. But anyways, it wasn't a Cuban boat. The boat we're looking at didn't resemble a Cuban vessel at all. That's when we realized we had made it to U.S. waters. What a feeling that was. Everybody's mood shifted immediately. They could hear the joyful cries from the adults. I could hear the joyful cries of the adults. Hope that we had found something. The skipper, my dad, tried to get us closer to the boat, but then suddenly the motor stopped working. So the men began to row. The boat eventually spotted us, that big boat, a lot bigger than ours. As we got closer, they were in shock to see us. Apparently, they contacted the Coast Guard because they weren't allowed to bring us into their boat, but they gave us a lot of water. And they threw a rope and they pulled us closer. My parents immediately asked for cigarettes. They got cigarettes, and it was like, oh my God, they're coming. They're going to find us. Well, they already found us, but again, we just felt like the family's coming still. The joy in their faces as they smoked their first American cigarette was priceless. Of course, we now know cigarettes are bad for you, but under that circumstances, I totally understood the smoking. And my parents smoked for decades. I think my dad still smokes. So with that said, it was something that they really needed after not smoking for a day or two. But for the first time, I saw the adults relax a little. The worry on their faces softened, replaced by gratitude. When the Coast Guard arrived, wow, what a sight that was. From the tiny rowboat, it looked like a massive ship. In my eyes, it was bigger than a cruise ship. I had never seen a cruise ship either, so I don't know what I was comparing it to, but it was huge. I've never seen a boat that big before in my life. We had been rescued, guys. It was a beautiful moment. The Americans who had thrown us the rope and the Coast Guard officers who arrived were filled with excitement and joy for us. We later learned that that we were the first group to reach those shores after Castro had taken over. They were excited for us, and for a moment we felt like rock stars. So this is going to be the first episode, and I'm going to leave it like that because, again, I don't want to bore you, and still working on the second one. But my whole purpose for this is hopefully for my kids, because I wasn't going to write a book, and I want them to have this on, and why I am such conservative, and why I take pride in fighting for conservatism, and for why I'm so against communism and socialist. And I just feel like whether it be MAGA, whatever they call it, I would feel the same way. Now, keep in mind that when we're all younger, we all tend to be liberals. I know that. I'd never followed politics ever, not until Donald Trump came about. And then I followed it because I thought it was so unfair to that one man. But now I know, and I'll talk about that in other episodes. But it's when you come from a communist country, you're very careful. And the Democratic Party seems to have lost their way. Many Cubans were Democrats, and many Latinos are Democrats. But they're losing us because they don't understand the socialist doesn't work. Everything cannot be rainbows and unicorn. So with that said, I'll come back with episode 2. And hopefully you like it and you stay tuned, and please subscribe and share. Subscribe and share and get me the followers that I need so I could continue to do this. And again, I'm doing it for fun. I'm doing it out of the kindness of my own heart, because whether I get 1 view or 2 views, this is therapeutic for me. Me letting it all out, again, is very therapeutic. So with that said, love you, thank you, and we'll see you soon.